لله الذي أناديه كلما شئت لحاجتي وأخلو به حيث شئت لسري من غير شفيع فيقضي لي حاجتي. All praise be to the one that I can call and speak to whenever I want, and even have a private audience with him if I wish, without the need for anyone to get involved. ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنام حبيب الملك العلام أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، الحجة ابن الحسن فداه أرواح العالمين. السلام عليك يا أمين الله في أرضه وحجته على عباده. Salam be upon you, O Amir al-Mu'mineen. You are the proof of God on earth. أشهد أنك جاهدت في الله. I testify that you spared no effort in pleasing the Almighty. حق جهاده وعملت بكتابه. And you followed the teachings of the Quran. واتبعت سنن نبيه. And you followed in the footsteps of the Prophet. حتى دعاك الله إلى جواره. Until the day you met your Lord. فقبضك إليه باختياره. وألزم عداك الحجة مع ما لك من الحجج البالغة على جميع خلقه. The topic for tonight's discussion is Amir al-Mu'mineen's system of governance. Now this might seem like an irrelevant issue or an irrelevant topic to you guys, but the reason why this discussion is important is because we want to showcase to the world the uniqueness of Amir al-Mu'mineen and how Ali ibn Abi Talib is different. He stands out. When he is in the position of power and authority, did Ali practice what he preached? I mean, it's easy to describe justice, to talk about the values and principles, but when you are in the position of power and authority, you practice what you preach. We see a lot of people speak about these human values. Politicians, they make a lot of promises, but when they are in the position of power and authority, do they follow through? Do they keep their promises? Absolutely not. There is a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Amir al-Mu'mineen to lead and to succeed the Prophet after his death. Amir al-Mu'mineen possessed all the qualities. Imam al-Baqir says, كانت في علي سنة ألف نبي. Ali ibn Abi Talib espoused the traits of 1,000 prophets of God, not one, not two. I don't know if you've heard of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He's one of the founders of the Muslim sects. He's written a book about the virtues of the Sahaba, 2 volumes. You can download the PDF file, easily accessible. So 1 volume is about the companions of the Prophet. 1 whole volume about all the companions. Those that were virtuous, of course, from their point of view. And he dedicated an entire volume, only 2 volumes. 1 volume is exclusively about Ali ibn Abi Talib. Even though it's worth noting that once they asked a man by the name of Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi. He's a linguist. He lived in Basra. 2nd century scholar. They asked him about Ali ibn Abi Talib. He was a secret Shia, as they say. It's a bit difficult to distinguish the Shias in the 2nd century. But because of some of the statements that he made, we can kind of tell that he was a Shia. So they asked him, what do you think of Ali ibn Abi Talib? His response was interesting. He said, what can I say about a man whom his enemies concealed his virtues out of envy because they hated him? Muawiyah waged an all-out war against Ali's virtues. You couldn't even mention them. It was outlawed. He would be imprisoned. He would be killed. What can I say about a man whose enemies hid his virtues out of envy? And his friends and followers and lovers and fans, they concealed and hid his virtues out of fear of persecution. And despite the collected efforts of the foes and friends, his virtues have filled the horizon. Ahmad ibn Hanbal writes 2 volumes about the Sahaba, and 1 volume is exclusively about Ali ibn Abi Talib. In his book about Ali, he says that the Prophet said, this is not a Shia hadith. It's been mentioned in our books as well, but the primary source is in Sunni books. He says that the Prophet said, من أراد أن ينظر إلى آدم في علمه. Whoever wants to see Adam in his knowledge. So the feature that made Adam stand out, according to the Quran, is his knowledge. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. He was endowed with knowledge. So if you want to see Adam in his knowledge, and Nuh, the great prophet of God, Noah, in his resolve, for 950 years he preached. Imagine, every 100 years, he would add only 10 believers. He was able to only convince 100 people. 950 years is a lot. Anyone that wants to see Nuh in his resolve, and Ibrahim in his hilm, in his ability to suppress his anger. This is one of the main features of Ibrahim. It's mentioned in the Quran. Inna Ibrahim la'awwahun halim. He was able to make a prayer invoking God's wrath to erase all his enemies, but he didn't. His main feature is hilm, the ability to suppress his anger. So the Prophet is saying anyone that wants to see Ibrahim in his ability to suppress his anger. And anyone that wants to see Musa alayhi salam in his authority over the Israelites, in his command over his followers. This is the main feature of Musa alayhi salam. And anyone that wants to see Prophet Jesus in his detachment of this world, in his altruism, in his zuhd. And anyone that wants to see Muhammad in his akhlaq should look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. Again, this is Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He's not a Shia scholar. He mentions this hadith, which states that all the virtues and all the features of the prophets gathered in the personality of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Another Sunni scholar by the name of Ahmad ibn Shu'aib al-Nisa'i. Again, he's one of the writers of the 6 collections of hadith, As-Sahah al-Sitt. His name is An-Nisa'i. He's a famous man. So he writes a book about the virtues of Ali, despite all the efforts to wipe them out, to erase them. An entire book about the virtues of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He travels to Sham. Sham historically had always been the stronghold of the Umayyads. So he goes to Sham. They recognize him. An-Nasa'i, Ahmad ibn Shu'aib, a great scholar. And they tell him, Ya Nasa'i, you've written a whole book about the virtues of Ali, and you haven't written anything about Muawiyah. Because they believe in Muawiyah, they love Muawiyah. He said, to my knowledge, the only virtue that Muawiyah had was what the Prophet said about him. He was a writer. He used to write when the Prophet needed him. So once the Prophet wanted someone to write down something, the Prophet couldn't write anything. Not that he was illiterate. He wasn't supposed to write. So he called Muawiyah. They said he's eating. Called him again, still eating. Called him again. So the Prophet said, La ashba' Allahu batnah. May his stomach, may he never reach satiety. So he said, the only hadith that I know pertaining to Muawiyah is this hadith. So they were angered. So they stomped over him until he was killed. Look it up. An-Nisa'i, how he died. Because of a book that he wrote about Imam Ali, and because of his refusal to write about Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. So we're not here to talk about the virtues of Ali. Who am I to even talk about the virtues of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Imam al-Hadi says, he was in Medina. He was summoned by the Caliph of the time. So the Caliph was in Samarra. So the Imam is taken to Baghdad, from Baghdad to Samarra. On the way to Baghdad, he tells the people that were with him to take him to Najaf. So he goes to Najaf. It was on the 18th of the Hajj, the day of Ghadir. So he recites a ziyarah, a beautiful ziyarah. Inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you the tawfiq, I urge the brothers to recite this ziyarah, filled with verses, filled with prophetic traditions. So he stands in front of the grave of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and for an hour and a half perhaps, the Imam just speaks about the virtues of Ali, non-stop. And then, as if the Imam gets tired, he knows he's getting nowhere. And then he says, وَأَنَّا يُحِيطُ الْمَادِحُ فَضْلَكَ. A person who wants to delve into your virtues will never reach the bottom of it. وَأَنَّا يُحْبِطُ الطَّاعِنُ أَجْرَكَ. And all the criticism of all the enemies throughout history were not able to bring you down, to tarnish your reputation, your personality. And then the Imam says, وَفِي مَدْحِ اللَّهِ لَكَ غِنًى عَنْ مَدْحِ الْمَادِحِينَ. Who am I to speak about his virtues when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every time he spoke about the mu'mineen, he made a mention of Ali ibn Abi Talib in the Quran. He was primarily speaking about Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. So when we speak about Ali ibn Abi Talib's system of governance, we're trying to prove that Ali ibn Abi Talib stands out. Ali ibn Abi Talib is different. Ali ibn Abi Talib is unique. There is a reason why Ali ibn Abi Talib is the primary source of values. We extract our values from Ali ibn Abi Talib's life. How? Prove it to me. We showcase his system of governance. And also, one of the reasons why we discuss this topic is because we need to identify the original version of Islam and distinguish between the original version of Islam from the counterfeit version of Islam. We have two different versions, the original one and the counterfeit. This is why Ali ibn Abi Talib had to rule, even though it was only 4.5 years. But through these 4.5 years, you could see the justice, the divine justice. You could see equality. You could see Ali ibn Abi Talib's selflessness. You could see Ali ibn Abi Talib's detachment from this world, the pleasures of this world. While when you look at others, you see obsession and indulgence in the pleasures of this world. And this is why, in my opinion, his enemies spared no effort to bring down his government from day one. Why? Because now people can compare. Before Ali ibn Abi Talib, people thought this is how Islam should be. This is how people should govern. This is how we should live. But then when Ali came, now they can make a comparison between Ali and others. No, Ali is different. This is why Fatima al-Zahra, 30 years before Ali ibn Abi Talib assumed power, she spoke about his system of governance. When she was on her deathbed, the women of the Muhajirin and Ansar went to visit her. How are you, O daughter of Rasulullah? Instead of saying, I'm good, alhamdulillah, or I'm sick, I'm not feeling well, all she spoke about was Ali ibn Abi Talib. This was her cause. This is why she was killed. Brothers, sisters, we need to promote Ali. It's an obligation. He is not just a source of inspiration. He is the source of values, as I mentioned. The Prophet made a prayer on the 18th of Dhul Hijjah. He said, "O God, unsur man nasarah." Anyone that supports Ali, support him. Support her. And anyone that fails to support Ali, anyone that abandons Ali, anyone that ignores Ali, anyone that doesn't promote Ali, oh God, abandon them. And we know that the Prophet's prayer is answered. So this is our responsibility. This is a duty of ours. Fatima al-Zahra fulfilled her duty. She came in support of Ali. She defended Ali until she was crushed between the wall and the door. They come to visit her. How are you? She said that if you give Ali free rein, لَعَلِمْتُمُ الصَّادِقَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِ, you will then recognize who is truthful and who is lying. وَالزَّاهِدَ مِنَ الرَّاغِبِ, who is obsessed with the pleasures of this world and who is zahid, has no attachment to this world. Fatima al-Zahra says this. وَالطَّبِينِ بِأَمْرِ الدُّنْيَا وَالدِّينِ, if you want an expert both in the affairs of this dunya and the akhirah, then it's Ali ibn Abi Talib. فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ, where did you go? Who did you choose to be your leader? Fatima al-Zahra objects. So they said, Ya bint Rasulillah, I mean, we were kind of forced to give bay'ah, and this is what we did, basically. Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he was in position of authority, the main feature that Ali ibn Abi Talib had was he wasn't there to indulge in the pleasures of life. Oh no. The main reason why Ali ibn Abi Talib accepted to lead was to establish justice. This is why we find that Ali ibn Abi Talib never made use of the privileges associated with leadership. For example, when you become a leader, this would result in an increase in your wealth. Ali ibn Abi Talib did not take a dime from Baytul Mal. The money that he earned was from a ranch that he had in Medina. When he entered the city of Kufa, he said to the people of Kufa, "O people of Kufa, I am entering your city with these two clothes, the rida and the izar, and my sword and my horse. If I leave your city or die with anything more than what you see, then I have betrayed you." When you become a leader, a ruler, a president, a prime minister, when you walk with an entourage, right? Ali ibn Abi Talib would always walk alone. He wouldn't let anyone walk with him. A person comes and he wants to ask Ali ibn Abi Talib a question. Amir al-Mu'minin would stand, stop, answers the question, then walks again. He would say, "Inni akrahu khafqan na'ali khalfi." The sound of the shoes behind me, this is what makes people arrogant. I don't like this. Even his two children, Hassan and Hussein, they couldn't walk with him. He didn't have any bodyguards. This is why one day a Jewish man had a Muslim friend in the city of Kufa. So he had a question. The Muslim man said, "Why don't you ask this question from Ali ibn Abi Talib?" He said, "The emperor?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Can I even see him?" He said, "Yes, why not?" He said, "Okay, why not? It would be an honor." So they passed by a tree. There was a man sleeping under the tree. He said, "This is our emperor." He said, "This is the emperor of not one country of our countries today, 50 of our countries today were under the rule of Ali ibn Abi Talib." So when he looked at him, he said, "عَدَلْتَ فَطْمَأْنَنْتَ." Because you're a just ruler, you don't even need bodyguards. Why do presidents, prime ministers need a lot of bodyguards. Because they've done a lot of damage. They're scared of the people. I even thought I was not scared of the people. Sleeps alone under a tree. Ali ibn Abi Talib's lack of interest in this dunya allowed him to rule in a way that would please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His clothes, what he ate, how he lived. His house was a modest house that he built with his own hands. Even though when he went to Kufa, there was a big palace that the previous occupant, the governor of Kufa, had occupied. He refused. He entered the city of Kufa, went to the main mosque, prayed 2 raka'at, built a house for himself from mud, stayed in his house. What was Ali's food? ألا وإن إمامكم قد اكتفى من دنياه بطمريه. Once, a man from the city of Basra, he comes to visit Amir al-Mu'mineen. It was during the month of Ramadan. So the Imam said to him, do you want to stay in the mosque and eat, break your fast with all the Muslims? Or do you want to come to my house and be my guest? He thought to himself, I'll be the guest of the emperor. The food is much more delicious. This is what he thought. So he said, no, I accept your invitation. I'll come to your house. So he goes to the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When it was iftar time, Amir al-Mu'mineen takes out a jar made from mud. And then the Imam, it was sealed. The Imam breaks the seal. He takes out a loaf of bread that the man said had this smell in it, as if it was rotten. And it was dry. The Imam had to break it with his knees. Just bread with salt. This is his food. So I looked at Imam al-Hassan. I said to him, Irhamu hadha shaykh. Your father is an old man. Make the bread a little bit greasy. Add some oil to it. He said he wouldn't let us. We used to put a little bit of oil in the past, but he began to seal it and stamp it. So we can't break it. This is his food. One day they see Amir al-Mu'mineen in the middle of the marketplace in Kufa, holding his sword. He said, أيها الناس من يشتري مني سيفي هذا. Who is willing to buy the sword from me? So he came to the marketplace to sell something, a commodity. What? He's selling this sword? Which sword is this? He gave a description. فإنه سيف طالما كشف الكرب عن وجه رسول الله. This is a sword that for 23 years shielded the Prophet, protected the Prophet. It's Dhul Fiqar. And then the Imam said, فَوَالَّذِي نَفْسُ عَلِيٍّ بِيَدِهِ. By God, the creator of Ali, if I can afford buying dinner for my family tonight, I wouldn't sell my sword. While he was the emperor of the Muslims. While? Because he wanted to equate himself with the poorest. I have a lot to say about his system of governance. Unfortunately, I only have 10 minutes left. But there is a letter in Nahj al-Balagha that I found very interesting and very telling of his method of governance. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam sends a letter to the commanders of his army, the people in charge. And this letter is in Nahj al-Balagha. This is what he says. Min abdillah. I am a slave of Allah subhanahu. This is my description. I'm not the king of the kings. I'm not the prime minister. I'm not the ruler. I am Abdullah. He appoints Ibn Abbas. I'll mention this between 2 brackets. He appoints Abdullah ibn Abbas to be the governor of Basra. Back then, the governors were like presidents today because they preside over a large province. He sends a letter to the people of Basra. Instead of just praising him and you should listen to him and obey him, he said, هذا ابن Abbas, I have appointed him as your leader. أطيعوه ما أطاع الله. Obey him as long as he's obedient to God. If he's not obedient to God, you shouldn't obey him. من عبد الله علي أمير المؤمنين إلى أصحاب المسالح, to his commanders, the commanders of his armies. أما بعد فإن حقا على الوالي أن لا يغيره على رعيته فضل ناله. Ali ibn Abi Talib had full authority, as I mentioned last night. He wasn't answerable to anyone. This is what people wanted, for Ali to lead. No questions asked. But Ali imposes on himself a set of rules. He said that when a president or a prime minister or an emperor occupies this position, then it is one of the rights of the people upon him not to change. How did he live before becoming an emperor? He should live the same way. He shouldn't change his lifestyle. He was accessible back then. He would walk in the streets. Anyone could reach him. Anyone could approach him. This is how an emperor should be even after they occupy this position. And in fact, he should now give more access to the public than before. Before, you were a private citizen. But now, because you're the emperor, anyone should be able to come to you, listen to you, talk to you. And this is how Ali was. Anyone could knock his door. Ali himself would open the door. Every single day, Ali would lead the congregational prayer in the mosque of Kufa, the grand mosque. And then spend some time doing ta'qib after Salat al-Subuh. And then he would give full access to everyone, to the general public. The majority were beggars, but Ali should give access to everyone. No one should be blocked. Now compare Ali to every other president and prime minister. I remember when one of the presidents of the United States, after he finished his term, they found 50 million unread letters in his inbox. Each letter is a request, is a plea. And we're talking about the most democratic country, the most civilized country in the world. 50 million unread letters. Ali says you should give full access. Anyone can reach you. And this is how Ali was assassinated, right? But was Ali assassinated because he failed to protect himself? No. He protected himself through justice. This is why when he saw Ibn Muljam, when he first met him, he said, "Why did you kill me? أَبِئْسَ الْإِمَامْ كُنْتُ لَكْ." Was I unjust to you? Did I do any injustice to you? If yes, please say it so the world can hear. You were unjust to me and this is why I killed you. What was his response? Ibn Muljam. He says, أَفَأَنْتَ تُنْقِذُ مَنْ فِي النَّارِ. No, I am a wicked man. Are you trying to salvage someone who's going to hell? I'm going to hell, Ya Ali. It wasn't because of you, it's because of my ego. It's because of my wickedness that I killed you. I have so many stories, so many examples, so many things to tell. But what can I say about Ali? If we had the entire year to speak about Ali ibn Abi Talib, we would barely be scratching the surface. I mentioned this story and then finish this hadith. A woman by the name of Sauda bint Ammar al-Hamadani, a woman from Yemen, a woman, back then, women were not respected. She goes to see Muawiyah. Muawiyah tells her, "Are you Sauda? You used to read these poems in Siffin in a very antagonizing way and mobilize the masses to engage in the Battle of Siffin against me, right? Was it you?" She said, "Yes, it was me." She was a brave woman. He said to her, "Why did you side with Ali? Why are you so obsessed with Ali? Because we know Ali doesn't bribe anyone." She said, "Muawiyah, you know why we love Ali. You know why we are obsessed with Ali. It's because of his justice. It's because of his relationship with Allah. It's because of the values that he upheld. It's because of his characteristics, oh Muawiyah." So he said, "Okay, what brings you to me?" She said, the commander of your army, Busr ibn Artat, wicked man, cruel man. He's killed so many members of my tribe. Muawiyah said, okay, you know what I'll do? I will handcuff you, make you ride on a saddleless camel, and send you to Busr ibn Artat and see what he does to you. The moment he uttered these words, suddenly she cried and said, صلى الإله على قبر على جسم تضمنه قبر فأصبح فيه العدل مدفونا. May God send His blessings upon the body that is now buried in the ground, and justice is now buried with him, gone. Muawiyah was very sensitive when it came to Amir al-Mu'minin. He said, who are you talking about? She said, who else? I'm talking about Ali. He said, why? Do you have a story with him? She said, indeed. I was in Yemen. He had appointed a governor. This governor of his used to investigate and probe into our wealth to take the zakat, the tax. In Islam, this is a religious duty. It's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no auditing in Islam from the government. You know your duty. You either fulfill your duty or not fulfill your duty. Between you and Allah. This guy has no right to investigate and probe how much we have. When Ali heard these words, suddenly he cried and he said, Allahumma, oh God, you know that these are not my orders. Afwan. Before this, she said that I went to visit Ali. Ali was in the Grand Mosque of Kufa. He was praying. But when he felt that there is a woman waiting by his side to ask him a question, انفتل من صلاته. He broke his salat. When it's a mustahab prayer, you can break it. A woman standing, she has a question, she has a query, she has a request. He breaks his salat. May I help you, ma'am? She said yes. She complained about his governor. Then he made this prayer, and then he took out a goat skin, which was like a form of paper that they used back then. He wrote the termination letter of his governor. What do governments do today, in these days? They always defend the people that they appoint. They always back them. He wrote his termination letter. The moment you receive this letter, you have to resign from your post. Sauda says, and he didn't even sign it. And he gave it to me. You see the relationship between Ali and his people? How strong this relationship was? He gave it to me. I went back to Yemen. He's the president of Yemen. Went to his office, gave him the termination letter. He read it, he resigned. Immediately. See the difference between you and Ali ibn Abi Talib. And now they're making it a series about Muawiyah with a budget of over $100 million. This is how they forge history. We have Ali. We have Ali. We need to study his life. We need to promote Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is a responsibility. So Ali says, one of the rights that you have upon me is that I need to be accessible. Anyone can come to me. Anyone can approach me. Anyone can come to my door. And then the Imam says, أَلَا وَإِنَّ لِي وَإِنَّ لَكُمْ عِنْدِي. You have few rights upon me. One, and لَا أَحْتَجِزُ دُونَكُمْ سِرًّا. I shouldn't withhold any information from you. I can't hide any secret from you. Is this how governments operate today? Or everything is discussed behind closed doors and behind the curtains? When it comes to politics, when it comes to security, when it comes to government policies, when it comes to the economy, we don't know anything. I remember once I saw this government official who said that I met with the vice president of one of the presidents of the United States. He said, he talked to me about something, one of the policies. I said, the general public, are they kept in the dark? He said, look, the American people only know 2% of what's happening. Just 2%. How much do we know about the economy? Nothing. There's a man who's opened this account on Twitter. He tracks down the investments of the members of the Congress because he knows these people, they know. When they invest, when they venture in a particular investment, they know what's going to happen because they are the ones that make these policies. We don't know anything. We don't know what's going to happen to Bitcoin. We don't know what's going to happen to the financial institutions. We don't know what's going to happen. These people know. And they don't share the information with other people. That's the difference between the Ahlul Bayt and everyone else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this about the Prophet. وَمَا هُوَ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ بِضَنِينَ. He wouldn't withhold the information that he knows. He shares it with the public. This is how you can please God. This is how you can enter paradise. He tells them everything. While we see the leaders, the rulers, the presidents, they hide everything. I'm talking about these civilized countries, let alone despotic regimes where people have no say in their own affairs. Number one, I withhold no information from you. وَلَا أَطْوِي دُونَكُمْ أَمْرًا. When I want to make a decision regarding the government, then you should have a say. In these countries, the most democratic societies, you elect the prime minister, the president, they get to lead for 4 years. No, you have no say in what they do. Khalas, you voted for him. Ali says, every decision that I make, then you have to have a say. وَلَا أَطْوِي دُونَكُمْ أَمْرًا إِلَّا فِي حُكْمٍ وَلَا أُؤَخِّرُ لَكُمْ حَقًّا عَنْ مَحَلِّهِ. And uphold your rights. وَتَكُونُوا عِنْدِي فِي الْحَقِّ سَوَاءً. And I should treat you equally. No nepotism in Ali's government. His brother, Aqil, comes, he's blind. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, give me some of the money that you have. This money is not mine. This money is not. The story is mentioned in Najj al-Balagha. His sister comes, Hani, the aunt of Imam al-Hasan and Hussein. She comes to receive her monthly allowance. She's happy that the emperor is now her brother. She's given 20 dirhams. She has a maid, an African maid. So the maid goes inside Baytul Mal. She receives her allowance. When she comes out, she asks her, so how much were you given? She said 20 dirhams. She said, like mine? I was given 20 dirhams. You were given 20 dirhams? She goes back inside. She meets her with her brother. Ya Ali, I am your sister. And I'm from Quraysh. He says to her, Ya Hani. She was a good woman. Ya Hani, when I look at the Quran, I don't see any preference given to a woman from Quraysh. Or if this woman happens to be the sister of the emperor over anyone else. We're all equal. The only thing that can distinguish us is taqwa and nothing else. We're all equal. I'll conclude with this story, even though I want to recite the tragedy of Amir al-Mu'mineen, but I can't continue when it's salat time. So, Abu Bakr ruled for a year and a half. Umar came, ruled for about 12 years. Umar came and he changed everything. He used to give the people that were in Badr more than everyone else. The wives of the Prophet, 12,000 dirhams. 12,000 dirhams per month, which was a lot of money. He used to give the elites more than others. So suddenly Ali comes in now, they're all equal. Obviously they won't like it. So the first thing that the Imam did when he became the Khalifa, he said, bring all the money in Baytul Mal, let's distribute it equally. Talha and Zubair, who used to receive a lot of money during the time of Umar, suddenly now they're receiving like everyone else. They didn't like it. They refused to take the allowance. They said, we want to meet the Khalifa. They went to Ammar, we want to see the Khalifa, make an appointment. Appointment? Ali doesn't need an appointment. Go see him. He's working at a ranch. Still working, even though he's a Khalifa, to earn money. And all the money he earned, he gave it to the poor. So they go, they see Ali working at a ranch. They said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we want to talk to you. He said, okay, talk to me. He said, no, can we at least go to the shade? Okay, let's go to the shade. They went under a tree. He said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you're now equating us with everyone else, with the ordinary people, even though we are related to the Prophet. Zubair is the cousin of Rasulullah himself. That's number one. Number two, we were amongst the first people to believe in the Prophet. Unlike these people. Some of these people, they became a Muslim 2 days ago. Number three, our support for Islam is unparalleled. We took part in every war. We're war veterans. When they finished, Amir al-Mu'mineen said, okay, based on this criteria that you mentioned, am I closer to the Prophet or you? They said, no, you. Cousin of the Prophet, his son-in-law, and a brother of Rasulullah. The Prophet said, you are my brother, anta akhi, wa warithi, wa wasiyyi. No, there's no one closer to you, to the Prophet than you. He said, okay, regarding the second issue, who was the first person to believe in the Prophet? كنت أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا. They said, you. No doubts. He said, okay, with respect to the jihad and the support for Islam, did you lend more support to Islam or me? In the Battle of Badr, the Muslims, 70 Muslims took part in the war. They were able to kill 70 of the enemy combatants. All the Muslims collectively, they were able to kill 35 soldiers. Ali ibn Abi Talib was able to kill the other 35. And he supported them in the 35 that they killed. Ali sacrificed. Ali stood with the Prophet when everyone escaped, when everyone fled the scene. So you supported Islam more than me. And then he said, my share from Baytul Mal is like my slave Qambar. We have to be equal. Amir al-Mu'mineen made this statement, which I think is perhaps one of the most important statements that the Imam made in his government. He said, Al-Qawi al-Aziz andi dha'if. I have no respect for the elitists, the corporations, the tribal leaders that usually can apply pressure on any government, and the government would yield. He said, Al-Qawi al-Aziz, the wealthy, the powerful, people of authority are weak in my eyes until justice is served. وَالضَّعِيفُ الذَّلِيلُ, and a weak person who has no wealth, no connections, no tribal status, is strong and powerful in my eyes until justice is served. And this is how people manage to live a peaceful life. He managed to maintain this divine equilibrium. People should not pursue wealth and power now because they're equal. Why do people pursue wealth and power in our world today? Because they realize through wealth and power, they have a say. They have an influence. People listen to them. Without wealth and power, who listens to you? But Ali says that I don't care about wealth and power. Sallallahu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Assalamu alayka ya awwala mazloom. Wa ya awwala man wasiba haqqah. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بجلال وجهك الكريم أن ينقضي عني شهر رمضان أو يطلع الفجر من ليلتي هذه ولك قبلي تبعة أو ذنب تعذبني عليه